as you can see from the fact that I'm wearing this awesome apron and my hair is up, which is weird, we're doing something a little different today. We decided we wanted to do something where we give you a little bit of a look behind the scenes in a little more of a casual, experimental sort of video. We are calling this Sushi Labs, and Sushi Labs are going to be two different things. One, which is what we are doing today, is going to be when I'm testing out somebody else's recipe that I don't know how it's going to go, so I feel like I need to try it and make sure I can figure it out before I do it for the final video. The other type is going to be when I'm actually developing recipes and I'm testing things out and experimenting a little more, seeing what a good final recipe would be. What we're doing today is we are making cheese curds from scratch. For those of you in the know, you might guess that we are going to be making some poutine very soon. And right now, the only cheese curds that I can get a hold of are these store-bought ones that expire maybe a year from now and definitely are not squeaky at all. First thing we're doing is we are getting two pots. One really big pot, one slightly less big but still fairly big pot. And we're gonna be using this as a water bath. I was a little worried going into this because I didn't know if I had any pots that were big enough. But luckily the big pot is the base of my steamer. I've got this big old steamer that we use for like making dumplings and stuff, and it's got a fairly large base. So that worked out. And then I'm using just my normal stock pot for the inner pot. What we're doing with this is we are making a water bath. So in the big pot, you're putting some water. In the smaller pot is going 2 gallons of milk. I'm going with the cheaper, ideally it would be non-pasteurized, but like where can you even find that? At a normal grocery store, it's pretty hard to find unless you're like in the country or something, I don't know. Where I am, it's pretty hard to find raw milk. So we are going with pasteurized, but not ultra-pasteurized milk for this. 2 gallons of milk, and it's just going in the inner pot, and we are heating that to 90 degrees. It'll take a little while. Why is it going down in temperature? It's supposed to get hotter, not colder. I'm using a recipe from cheesemaking.com, and it says to use either 2 ounces of buttermilk or 1 packet of mesophilic blend, which I don't know what that is. Buttermilk's a lot easier for me to get, and it was the first ingredient, so I'm going with that. I mentioned before that I don't have great experience with cheese. I've tried making cheese once, and it was mozzarella, and it failed miserably. So of course, the logical thing would be to try a more difficult cheese for my second try. All right, so we've hit 90 degrees, and we're gonna add this buttermilk that we measured out. So I'm gonna pour that in. And then we're supposed to just cover it and hold it at 90 degrees. It says add the culture, but it doesn't say to mix it in. Okay, we have mixed. Now we are supposed to hold it at 90 degrees for an hour. All right, so I got my cover. I think I'm gonna leave it partially open just so I can still have my thermometer in there. And here's the tricky part of keeping it at a temperature. So I'm gonna keep an eye on that, but we're pretty much just chilling for an hour, waiting for this to cook. All right, so the milk has been hanging out at allegedly 90 degrees, but it maintains its temperature really, really well. So it's actually been at like 97 for the past hour. I've had the heat off and it's just stuck at that temperature. So I'm hoping I didn't screw it up, but we'll see. In the meantime, I am going to be mixing some calcium chloride with a little bit of water and that's going to be going in next. And then we're also going to be adding our rennet. The reason I'm adding this is because it's supposed to help when you are not using raw milk. So if you're using pasteurized milk, this is supposed to do something to help the balance of what's in there. So it will be more likely to make cheese correctly. I'm not a cheese scientist, so don't quote me on this, but something like that. So we have 1/8 of a cup of cold water. We are adding in 3/8 of a teaspoon of this. So this measurement is 1/8. Close this. All right, so we're gonna add this in and stir it well. And then we are going to add in our rennet next. So I'm just pouring it over this so it will disperse a little bit better. All right, now we're going to do our rennet. And I happen to have these from the last time I made cheese. These are the rennet tablets. And luckily for me, this is using a half tablet, and I used a half tablet last time. So it's actually working out perfectly. I need to crush this. And the rennet is the enzyme. That's the enzyme that makes the cheese curdle. All right, I found my pestle. I didn't want to dirty the whole mortar and pestle just for this. And I was also afraid that if I did it in the mortar, it would have gotten all like stuck to the edges and I wouldn't be able to use all of it. So what I'm doing is I'm just using this to very gently crush this in a napkin. I'm hoping this will work. Maybe not. This might have been a mistake. This is not doing anything. I may need to do this in something more, but BRB. All right, now I've got the full mortar and pestle. And we've got our little tablet, our little half tablet. So I'm going to crush it. Okay, now it is time to add this into our milk. Trying to get this scattered so it's all over rather than just in one spot. All right, and it says to stir it up and down, so not around and round like you normally would. I'm guessing this has something to do with the forming of the curds. Like all the rennet is ending up on my spoon and not in the milk. Hopefully this works. Did I mention I've had bad luck with cheese? When I mixed in that powdered rennet, most of it ended up on the spoon, so it felt like I was doing something wrong. I went back and reread the instructions, and what it says is half a tablet of vegetarian rennet crushed, or half a teaspoon single-strength liquid rennet dissolved in a 1/4 cup cool water. So you would think it's saying either the crushed tablet or the liquid in water, but what I think it actually meant was either a crushed tablet or the liquid, but either way dissolve it in water, which makes a little more sense because very little of that rennet actually ended up in the cheese. So I'm redoing it. If my cheese ends up over curdled, we'll know why, but I have a feeling it probably would not have really curdled at all because I just didn't really end up with any rennet in the milk. So we're gonna do it. I've got water. I'm crushed up another tablet. So I'm going to be adding this again. Mix that up. And now we're going to try pouring this in again. And now we're pouring in the liquid and doing the weird up and down stirry again. And then I'm gonna restart the clock to go for 45 minutes and hope that my cheese curdles. But this feels better this way, so I'm hoping that'll actually work better. Think curdalicious thoughts. Curdle, 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 curdle. It is the moment of truth. Time to see if my cheese has curdled. So it says to test it, but ooh, look at that. Look at that. Okay, it says to cut it, and then that looks curdled to me, maybe. So I am not experienced enough as a cheesemaker to really know if this is enough of a curdle or not. But since we're experimenting, I am going to go ahead and just start cutting now and cut it into curds. And if it doesn't go right, we will be making it at least one more time for the final poutine. We're gonna try this and see. Experimentation. So the recipe says approximately 1/2 inch columns. So we're gonna cut it one way and then we'll cut it the other direction. It does feel really nice though. Like it's thick, there's a little bit of resistance. This seems like kind of a weird angle to cut it at, and it is a little awkward. But the point of cutting it like this is because obviously in the pot, we can't just cut it horizontally. So we are cutting these into more even like chunks rather than having these tall columns of cheese. After cutting, the curds have been sitting for about 5 minutes, just hanging out. And now it's time to cook our curds. So we're gonna turn the heat on, but keep it really, really, really low. We want to raise the temperature from about 90 where it is now to around 100, but we wanna take it about half an hour to raise the heat that much. And we're also gonna be stirring it gently and slowly while it cooks. So we'll be cooking it for about an hour of stirring. So that should be fun. See how we didn't cut it all the way through? That was why we wanted to try to get it horizontal, but since my knife was not my little spatula is not very long, it says to cut any big pieces that you find into smaller pieces. So we're mostly gonna be just cutting as we mix this. But at least we have this opportunity to get the curds to be a little smaller. So it's not like we totally messed it up or anything. Just finished the hour of cooking the curds. So I was pretty much standing here, stirring it, trying to make sure the temperature stayed at about 100 degrees Fahrenheit. So most of the time I had the heat off, but I did turn it on just for a little bit to keep the temperature up there when it was dropping. It's dark outside, so you can see it's been a while, but we're not done yet. Next step is we need to press this into a mass and then drain it. So that's what we're doing right now. So I'm actually gonna get my hand in here, which seems like the not smartest thing to do, but it's actually not that hot. It's only around 100 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's a nice, comfortable temperature. So I can get my whole hand in here. You can't really see it, but I can feel the curds at the bottom. And so we're really just trying to press them together until they're a solid mass. They're all sticking together. So it's not the most exciting looking thing right now, although it does feel kind of fun. But once it's all pressed into a mass, then we will be draining it. So I'll actually bring it out of the pot and out of the whey. This is the whey. So who is it? Little Miss Muffet. Little Miss Muffet? I don't know her puppet. Eating her curds and whey? Curds and whey.
No way.
Whey. All right, it doesn't really feel like it's forming into a mass. Like when I pick it up, it's still very loose. So I'm going to try draining it and just kind of skipping forward a step. So it says you can use a colander for this, but mine broke into such little pieces that I'm kind of glad I decided to go with this finer mesh strainer. So I'm hoping that this will mean it'll still drain nicely, but won't just fall through. I imagine you could also use cheesecloth, but I don't want to waste it if I don't need to, so I'm hoping this will work. All right. The curds have been sitting in my strainer for about 15 minutes, so they've just been hanging out and knitting together, allegedly. So we're gonna see. Still very floofy, but I mean, that looks pretty knit together to me. But we're gonna deal with the floofiness very, very soon. So it is time to cheddar. This next process that we're doing, it's called cheddaring, which I guess is how you get cheddar cheese. I never knew. But pretty much we are gonna cut this in half and then stack it and then flip it and then flip it and do that a bunch. I mean, let it sit in between flips, but pretty much it's gonna press the rest of the way out and it'll pretty much flatten it into the texture that we want. So I've filled a doubled up Ziploc bag with lukewarm water. It's about 90 degrees, I think is what we're going for. And we're gonna use this as the weight to help press this. This is a little uneven, but we're just gonna let this sit for 15 minutes and we're gonna flip it in another 15 minutes and keep doing that for about 2 hours. And then we'll be ready to cut and salt our cheese and then we'll be done. The final pressing of the cheese is done. And now it's time to take off the plate and the Ziploc filled with water. And we're gonna slice it and we're gonna salt it. And then it should be about ready. So we're gonna slice it about 1 inch thick. And then each of these we're gonna cut into about 2 inch. So putting the cheese curds back in the colander, not in a bowl, oops, and sprinkling about a teaspoon of salt on top of the curds. And we're gonna mix that for a few minutes, just with my hands or with a spoon. And it's in the colander because it may expel more whey. So we want that to drain. We don't want that to sit with the cheese. And then once that's all mixed in, we're gonna add another teaspoon of salt. Mix it until the salt is all, you can't see it anymore, and then they'll be ready to eat. So according to all of the instructions in the recipe, my cheese curds are done. They don't look quite like the pictures do, but I have a feeling some of that is because I don't think I pressed it quite enough because it was still kind of thick when we sliced it all up. But can't fix that now, which means, oh darn, guess I just have to eat it and try. So I'm gonna try some and see how it turned out. And I feel like the texture is pretty good. It's maybe not as dense as it should be, but it's not terrible. It's the moment of truth. I feel like the squeak is almost there. Almost. Like I can kind of, sort of feel it. It tastes a lot like mozzarella. It's really tasty. So even if this is technically not a total success, it's definitely not a fail either, because I will happily eat this cheese. I think we did okay. It was a long process. It probably took at least 5 or 6 hours, all said and done. But now that I've done it once, I'm not so intimidated about doing it again. I feel like I could do this again. So more cheese curds are in my future. What do you think?
It's tasty. cheesy. It's a little squeaky to me, but I'm not a cheese person, so I don't know how it's supposed to be
Okay,
like.
see, the problem is I've never actually had actual squeaky cheese curds. I've never had real poutine. I've never been to Canada. I've heard about it. I know they're supposed to be squeaky, but I don't know if it's like a kind of squeaky, or if it's just like that little...
It does squeaks a little bit when I'm biting into it.
Okay, because that's what I thought, but I wasn't sure if that's like as much as it's supposed to be, or if it's supposed to be like really, I don't know, like rubber squeaky.
It's pretty squeaky to me. Any squeakier and it will just be very...
Chewing on a mouse.
Yeah.
Okay,
I like
so
it. It's...
I think we've successfully squeaked our cheese curds.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
I'm happy with it.
Yeah.
I actually really like how this turned out.
Yeah.
I screwed up the rennet, I screwed up the heat, I possibly screwed up the pressing and the salting, and it still turned out.
So what did we learn today?
I'm a screw up. What we learned today is that cheese making is easier than I thought, although I still want to know what the heck I did wrong when I tried making mozzarella, because that did not go well. Making cheese curds, it takes a long time, but all that being said, it's not actually that difficult. If you have the right equipment and then the right ingredients, it seems to work pretty flawlessly. So if you've ever made cheese, let me know, and let me know what kind of cheese you've made. If you enjoyed our Sushi Lab, definitely let me know, and sub if you aren't already. Like this video, because that will let me know that you loved our Sushi Labs. And if there's anything else that you want me to either attempt on Sushi Labs or develop on Sushi Labs, something interesting, let me know, because this was a lot of fun. It took a lot of time, but it was a lot of fun for me. And I'm hoping you enjoyed this little more casual behind the scenes look in the sushi kitchen. We'll see you next time.